an animal thing. So I quoted the whole verse there. Najayate mriyate vakadachin. Who knows which verse that is from Bhagavad Gita? Ladies first. It's one of the first verses we learn, about the soul. Najayate mriyate vakadachin nai bhutva bhavita vanabuya. Yes? Ajo nichak shashvato jan parano. Hanyate hanyamani sharire. 220. They're all in the second chapter. All these verses about the soul. The soul is neither born nor dies. It is neither been nor will it be created, because it is unborn and eternal. It is ever youthful and yet ancient. It is not destroyed when the body is destroyed. Yeah. And then the next one, I put these in the footnotes, just as reference here. So to give the whole verse so someone can see it, look it up if they want. Nainam chindanti shastrani, nainam dahati pavaka, na chainam klidayant apo, na shoshayati maruta. 223. Weapons cannot pierce the soul, fire cannot burn it, water cannot wet it, and air cannot dry it. And then this one here could be a little bit confusing because he said the threat of atomic war, that is rather a positive contribution. You'll have to do or die. So do or die, but he's just said you don't die, right, by any material means. So I said, i.e., war is a positive contribution, an impetus, a push to our spiritual endeavour and realization. The soul does not die, so the expression that you'll have to do or die might appear contradictory. It's being used here in the sense of, this is a great opportunity for you, the threat of impending atomic war. Now you'll have to get yourself out of body consciousness and into soul consciousness and Krishna consciousness in short order. So there's the physical civilization and the spiritual civilization. Spiritual culture, civilization says, come hither or be the victim of the atom bomb. Don't identify yourself with the physical body, for that is always in danger, wholesale. But try to get out of this physical existence to attain some noble and higher existence for yourself. There is time yet. Whatever time is in your hand, utilize it to free yourself from your mal-identification, that you will die by the atom bomb. You won't die. If you can enter into Krishna consciousness, there's no death. And not only no death, but there is a life of nectar eternally. It is nearby, very close to you. But you've come here, you've run a long way to this material world, only to die. But the nectar ocean of Krishna consciousness is very near to you as you as you are to yourself. Your real self is there. Why do you care for all these material things? Unquote. This is Guru Maharaj's paraphrase of what Shukadeva Goswami is saying. At the conclusion of Srimad Bhagavatam, the warning is given to Parikshit Maharaj and to all of us. This animal consciousness, butcher it. Tanta rajan manishyati pashu buddhi naham dehi. Pashu buddhi means animal consciousness. Kill it, murder this animal consciousness about yourself, that you will die. Why have you allowed yourself to come down and identify yourself with this material world which dies? You're above death. Your real self is already above death. What you are really, that is above death. And that doesn't die when the matter, your material body, is being transformed into so many constituents. This idea that I shall die, kill it. It is pashu buddhi. Animal consciousness. This false identification of yourself with this body is the cause of your material condition. End of quote. So disconnect yourself from the material body, from body consciousness. Just as in a dream, you may see that your beheaded body is lying there. A beheaded man doesn't have any existence, any life. But in your dream you see that and identify with it and suffer so much. All of what you are seeing now, it is like that, like a dream. But you are independent as a seer of this world. If the world is being destroyed, you are an onlooker. Oh, the world is being destroyed. From aloof, you are only looking. You're not included there. You can make yourself separate from this mal-identification. So Shukadeva Goswami tells Parikshit Maharaj, there's enough time. You do it. Immediately. Begin. You are an onlooker. You are a subject and not object. The objective world may vanish. The whole world, the entire solar system may vanish. But you're not a member of that mortal world. You are a seer, always a seer, a subject. And your prospect is not with mortality, but is on the other side, the higher side, the super-subjective side. Don't mingle, entangle yourself with this mortal world. You've come here to do that, for exploitation. But you are Tatashta. You're coming from the marginal plane, and on the other side of that plane is a land of prospect for you. It is infinitely spread there. So begin your activity for such a land, your cultivation. So begin your activity, your cultivation for such a land, and that will produce gems, gold for you. That's what gave me the idea to call it soul gems, yeah, because you mentioned that there. So that's the first one. It's called From Dream to Reality. Shall I do one more?
Yes, please.
Okay, I'll just carry on until I stop. So the second jewel is called The Nature of the Soul. And the question is very interesting how Guru Maharaj answers this question, because the type of question it is and the answer he gives, in the beginning you think like, well, what's that? How does that answer relate to the question in a way? But you see, Guru Maharaj always takes things on a very, very, whether you call it stratospheric or very deep level. So he's going right behind the whole question, you know. It's like sometimes when you do the tarot, right? If you do, you ask a question and you get an answer. You say, well, what does that mean? And then you realise, oh, it's answering a question which is much behind that, what I was consciously asking, the real thing, the real problem, the real reason, you know. So the devotee asks, why is it that we are deceitful? And Guru Maharaj says, the vulnerability, the weakness, imperfection is within us. It is within our construction as soul. We are meagre. How can we be perfect? We have atomic existence in every way. The atom cannot hold everything within itself. But adaptability, and so possibility and prospect, that is also within us. Both aspects are there. The Jeev Tatashta is a marginal point, a spark, endowed with the adaptability for two sides. He can come down to the material world to exploit, and he can go up to serve the higher. Association with the higher and association with the lower, these two, the double possibility is within him. He has such adaptability, and such is the constitution of all Tatashta souls or jivas in their atomic existence. It is achintya, something inconceivable, but it has been explained in this way, ultimately. Explained in this way, the way that he has explained and is going to explain, and I've said in the footnote, explained in this way, that is not by philosophical speculators, but by the scriptures, Vedas, Puranas, etc., and the bona fide saints and Mahajans, or authorities on devotional service. So explaining about the so-called origin of the jiva, and it's not something that can be speculated on, but that doesn't mean to say that the explanation that is given is fully understandable, because it isn't. That's why it's called achincha, inconceivable. And it's like the old circular argument, isn't it? If you say something's inconceivable and you try to conceive of it, it doesn't make sense. You have to accept it's inconceivable. But he's saying it's been explained in this way ultimately. When argument is pushed to the limits of our understanding, we have to follow this way, this line of thought. We have to accept such beginning data. We have to begin with data of such nature, both the innate vulnerability and the adaptability of the soul. Then we can explain the possibilities of life, the different ways the soul may go. Mahaprabhu says, Jiva Svarup hoy Krishnara Nityadas. The inner prospect of eternal service to Krishna is there in the jiva. Krishna tatashta shakti bed abed prakash. But he's found in a particular potency of Krishna, of the Absolute, which is tatashta. Tatashta means of a marginal nature. That is, he is situated on the margin. On one side, the ocean of exploitation, and on the other, the ocean of dedication. And the margin is of the nature of inertness, of indifference. But, closely inspected, we find there spiritual atoms that, though they apparently appear inert, indifferent, have within their inner constitution dynamic character. Such dynamic nature is there, though they are showing themselves as static outwardly in the Tatashta region. They may be taken into the dynamic position of exploitation, and it is also possible for them to participate in the dynamic plane of dedication. Their adaptability is such. And I'll put the footnote here. Srila Sri Ramanuja's explanation here is an answer to the initial question. I'm going to take it back to the original question. Why is it that we are deceitful? Underlying this is the question of how can a pure entity, the soul, take the wrong path. He's explaining the adaptability and vulnerability of the marginal soul. And yet, as he says, there is an inconceivability about the nature of the soul itself, the principle of the jiva, jiva tattva. Indeed, this should not be surprising, since the soul is part of one of the energies of the Lord, and the Lord himself is certainly inconceivable. Therefore, in Bhagavad Gita, after Krishna has been explaining in many verses to Arjuna the eternal nature of the soul, he concludes with this verse, 229. Ascharjavat pashati kaschidenam ascharjavat vadati tataiva chanya. Ascharjavat chainam anya shrinoti strutva enam veda nachaiva kaschit. Some see the soul as astonishing. Some describe it as astonishing. Some hear of it as astonishing. While others, though hearing of it, know nothing of it. And I've put Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada gives the last line, Shrutva enam veda nachaiva kaschit, as, quote, others, even after hearing about him, cannot understand him at all. So that's the second one on the soul. Hare Krishna.
Like in the Brahma Jyoti, and I heard that there was oneness and there is no individuality. So the soul or the jiva, it starts to exist only on the negative side of the reality, where it acquires ahankara or some sense of self, and making a choice would include having some sort of individuality on the other behalf.
Yes.
Therefore, choice is can be taken only by someone who acquired sense of I.
Well, yeah, as you mentioned there, the nature of the Tatastha Shakti is inertness and indifference, because when the jivas are there massed together without differentiation, like a mass of light, it seems to appear to be inert. But within each individual jiva's soul is a dynamic character, but that's unmanifest at that point. So like someone is sleeping, you say, oh, nothing doing. There's senses, no movement, nothing. But internally, of course, they're not dead. The soul is there. They're alive. And in the certain right conditions, they come in contact with the right conditions, and they'll wake up, and many things can happen then. Yeah. So something is entering, disturbing the equilibrium of the Tatastha plane, and then the souls are differentiating out into individuals. And so there's one more here somewhere. Oh yeah, this is the third jewel, and I've called it. It was difficult to get that in the right order of those three, but I thought the first one should be definitely, the order. So this one, third one, is called A Moment is Enough. And the devotee asked, I think it will take a long time to attain Christian consciousness in the full sense. You see these questions and you just think, what's Guru Maharaj going to say? He says, it's not a question of time, but only earnestness is necessary. When Parikshit Maharaj was appealing to Shukadev Goswami, I've got only 7 days' time, 7 days to live, before the Brahmin's curse will take me away from this life. Shukadev replied, this is enough time. Properly utilized, only a moment is sufficient. King Brahmatasya Bahubi, Parokar Hayanariha, Varam Muhurtam Viditam, Ghatate Shreyase Jatha. Bhagavatam 2:112. Quote, what is the value of a prolonged life which is wasted, inexperienced by years in this world? Better a moment of full consciousness, because that gives one a start in searching after his supreme interest. End of that quote. There are so many trees and so many mountains living for ages after ages. But what is the value of that? If properly utilized, one moment can make a revolutionary change within us towards the higher line of progress. The decision of a second, a moment, may help us greatly in our life. It may turn around one's life forever. Otherwise, if one is only sleeping, what is the benefit of living for ages and ages of time? Not purport, footnote. Sleeping here, of course, referring not literally to being asleep, i.e. at night, but meaning existing in a state of unconsciousness, ignorant of one's spiritual purpose or goal in the human form of life. Rocks, trees, etc. are generally existing in this state. In Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna, when exhorting Arjuna to wake up to his duty as a warrior to fight for Dharma, at one point addresses him, O Gudakesh, O conqueror of sleep. And there is the verse, Bhagavad Gita 269, Yanisha sarva bhutanam tasyam jagati shamyami yashang jagati bhutani sanisha pashyato mune. That which is day for the self-controlled sage is night for all beings. And that which is day for all beings is night for the sage who sees. So, otherwise, if one is only sleeping, what is the benefit of living for ages and ages of time? One moment, if it is utilized for searching after truth, Atma Samiksha, self-analysis, who am I? That is the beginning of our eternal fortune. To inquire after our own self, who am I? Where am I at present? And what is my future prospect? Our eternal fortune begins from here. So Shukadeva Goswami says, King Brahmatasya Bahubi, Varam Muhurtam Viditam, years and years passed in unmindful existence, a life unmindful of one's own interest. What is the good of that? So being as the modern society is, I had to give a small commentary there on mindfulness. Mindful and unmindful of one's own existence. The term mindfulness, originally extracted largely from Buddhist texts on meditation, has in recent times become a soundbite to supposedly validate any number of spiritual paths or teachings. Its secularized use in various forms of meditation has been found effective in a largely psychological context, in hospitals, prisons, for war veterans, PTSD, etc. However, shorn of its real significance, to be mindful of one's own soul and of the supersoul or God, as Sripad Maharaj is using it here, mindfulness refers only to a concentrated impersonalistic awareness of, quote, everything in the field of consciousness, unquote, to be, quote, in the moment, quote, to quote, be here now. However, Srila Prabhupada, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, on occasion is known to have pointedly said to a disciple who was thinking or acting in a spaced out or unorganized way, and even attempting to justify this by claiming it to be the result of their being absorbed in spiritual consciousness, first become conscious, then become Krishna conscious. So that was on there.
That was great,
But if even in a moment you are conscious, you carefully utilize that time to find out your own solution, to become mindful of the solution of your life, to ask, who am I, where am I, and from where have I come, and what is my prospect? This tackling of the universal questions is the beginning, the start of your spiritual prospect. That searching tendency comes from Sukriti. Then, when such Sukriti is accumulated sufficiently, it becomes Shraddha, faith, and then Krishna consciousness. But in the beginning there must be such self-analysis, self-inquiry, Atma Jigyasa, Brahma Jigyasa, to want to know, to ask these questions, who am I? And what is my spiritual future? With such self-analysis, your fortune begins, and then, when one goes to look and to compare what should be your best prospect, Brahma consciousness, Paramatma consciousness, Narayan consciousness, then Krishna consciousness, all these alternatives will come. So that's the end of that little first section, called Soul Gems. And then it sort of goes into kind of the book proper, as it were. And the first chapter there is called The Vision of Faith. So, anything you want to talk about? Or
so was that the intro?
It is, yes, it's the first chapter of the first section of part 1, so it's a kind of an introduction, yeah.
How many parts?
Well, there's 3 parts, and then probably about 18 or so chapters. That's good.
Just a small thing, he talked about Atma
Yeah.
Different thing?
I don't think so, no.
Okay.
Just different words for the... Although, you know, samiksha and jigyasa are slightly different, isn't it? Samiksha is more like... jigyasa means knowledge of the soul. And samiksha means like to look into it, to examine.
Okay.
Yeah. So...
Some subtle difference.
Yeah. Oh, I found a great one. I just have to read this one at time. But this, because this was a very late comer to the whole thing, you know. Because I had some notes on it, and I roughly transcribed it before, and I didn't know if it was going to fit in anyway. And then suddenly, just oh yeah, that's just perfect for the first part, Sambandha Gyan, as I was saying. And yeah, so that was actually chapter 1, which is like 3 sections. And I made this a whole separate chapter, chapter 2, although it's quite short. And called it the fields of day and night. And the question is, we have so many material desires, and also the environment is giving us some trouble. I actually had to change the question here because the way he asked the question was all a bit higgledy-piggledy, so sometimes you have to adjust the question to the answer, you know what I mean, to make it make more sense. You know? Like there's one book, you might have seen it, produced by ISKCON. In fact, there's 2 of them. One is Answers by Saraswati Thakur, and one is Answers by Bhakti Thakur. But they've basically invented the questions, you know, and then so he's like giving the answer to the invented question. Yeah. So the second part of it, I said, so sometimes we feel discouraged. How may we always maintain our enthusiasm and inspiration in spiritual life? Sripad Maharaj, if our desire for spiritual life is strong, then it may withstand so many oppositions from different conceptions, from different directions. There are so many things, desirable and undesirable. Sometimes we will be praised for our actions by a particular party, and sometimes there is some section that will discourage us, will abuse us. Everywhere this is the case. In whatever field of endeavour we work, such remarks of different types are sure to come. So here also, in the spiritual life, it is like that. Those who can appreciate the attempt will encourage us, and those who have no faith, they will discourage. It is quite natural. So then, we have to rely on the appreciation of the Vaishnava. Vaishnave pratishta tata korenishta. The opinion of the devotee, that will have value for us. The worldly people, they do not have any appreciation for the high spiritual life, and they will naturally discourage. What are they doing? They're wasting their life, running after the will-o'-the-wisp, after phantasmagoria. That will be their remark to us. You're living in imagination. God means only a kind of imagination. And leaving this world of reality, you are running after that. The world of soul. But the higher standard people, and I put the devotees, you know, because like, doesn't mean the bloke working in the supermarket who might have a lot of good qualities, you know, but yeah. They know the value of sacrifice for the absolute. They will think, to use the phrase of Hegel, that they must die to live. You will have to dissolve your whole present ego, that you are a master and you can do anything and everything. With such a wholesale death, you can peep into the other world of your soul. The Vaishnavas will appreciate this, and the Avaishnavas, the non-devotees, they will depreciate. They will discourage and also cast so many bad names to us. But one who is awake, who understands, he is satisfied and he won't care for these remarks, good or bad. He will think, I can feel this, I can see with my inner eye that this is true, this is good, and I must march on in this line, march onward. Such sincere seekers won't care for others' remarks, but they will have all regard for the remark of the Vaishnavas, the devotees, in their consideration, whether I'm good or bad. We shall give value to the appreciation or depreciation of the devotees, those who have taken their stand in spiritual truth, to their remark. If they say, this is wrong, I shall be very careful to correct myself in that matter. We are concerned about the opinion of the expert in the spiritual department. The ordinary people's opinion has got no value there. If the expert puts some remark about me, I must analyze what good or bad I'm doing, and I shall ask for his help, and I shall correct myself, and from purer to purer I shall move ahead. Darkness and light. That should be the policy. Vaishnava Pratishta. The remark of the Vaishnava will be of value to me, and not that of the ordinary people. Their opinion has no value, because they are in darkness. Yanisha sarvabhutanam tasyam jagati shamimi, same verse, jasyam jagati bhutani sanisha pashyato mune, 269 Gita. That which is day for the self-controlled sage is night for all beings, and that which is day for all beings is night for the sage who sees. Unquote. The materialists are awake in a particular field, and the devotees are awake in another field, spiritual field. There's the material field, the plane of exploitation, and the spiritual field, the plane of dedication, and also the plane of renunciation, 3 planes of life. And we want to enter the plane of dedication. And dedication also is of 2 kinds, one calculative, and the other is higher. It is of love and affection, blind love, and that is considered to be the highest. Correct yourself. Subheading. The opinion of the spiritual guardians must have some value, and we shall try to follow that. If in their view of me they see anything wrong, I shall try to give that up, to purge it out. In this way, Vaishnava Pratishta, what they want for me, I shall aspire for that. I shall try to become that. I slightly had to adjust that because it sounded, he said, what they want me to become or something. Anyway, it's okay. And the ordinary people, their remark has got no value at all here. Guru na shashat, sajano na shashat, pitanu shashat, daiva na shashat, na prati na shashat, na chaveda mrityum. Do you know where that verse is from, by the way? Could you check it? Maybe it's up there. I was looking in Gaudiya Kanta, but I couldn't find it. I don't think it's the Bhagavatam, but
How does it go, Maharaj?
Guru na shashat,
Guru
Sashyat, S-Y-A-T, then Sajano na Sashat.
Sajanu.
Yeah. But the meaning is, it's quite a long verse, is it? That father is not a father, that guru is not a guru, that relative is not a relative, that God is not a God, who cannot save me from the continued current of death. I'm always, unquote, I'm always undergoing the mortal energy. I'm a prey to that, always. Who cannot relieve me from that general danger of life? He is not my own. And who can do so? He is my own. So if necessary, I can leave everyone who is of such high order related to me. My father, my mother, my so-called spiritual guide, my husband, my worshipable god or demigod, all of them. So that's the end. It ends a bit abruptly there, but hopefully it morphs into the next chapter quite smoothly, yeah. Did you find it?
Yes, Maharaj, it's fifth canto of Bhagavatam,
Oh, great.
5518.
All right, okay, I'll write that down. 5518, yeah? Yeah, I can remember that.
5518.
Yeah. I'll just, but I'll get, do you want to read the whole thing? Because that was more or less his paraphrase.
One who cannot deliver his dependence from the path of repeated birth and death should never become a spiritual master, a father, a husband, a mother, or a worshipable demigod. And it's Lord Rishabdev's teachings to his sons is the chapter.
Right, 5518.
Who is Lord Rishabdev, the name of God?
He's a plenary expansion of Vishnu, Narayan, Lord Rishabdev. And his pastimes are in the Bhagavatam, very, very nice.
Never heard before from him. Only Rishabdev I heard is Rishabdev from Sokel.
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Rishabdev Das.
Yeah, he's famous pastimes, you know, he used to travel naked and lie on the road like a python. And then if anyone would feed him and like this, you know, and he would lie in his own stool, but it smelled like roses for like 10 miles.
Wow.
It's in the Bhagavatam. But then Prabhupada says in the purport that the so-called followers of Rishabdev, they became the Jains. You know, they go naked and they're like extremely renounced, you know. But they took it in a non-Vedic way. His teachings are all completely theistic. And they're very, very, very wonderful teachings, yeah. But the Jains, they took the renunciation part and the avadut part, but they don't believe in. Well, they believe in the soul, like Atma, but they say that it's kind of halfway between Vedic and Mayavad. You know, they say the soul exists, but then it becomes one with the Bhagavat. Ultimately, in mukti. So, you know, it's a kind of an aberration, really, of Vedic teachings.
And who was his father and mother?
Actually, that I can't remember. It'll be there. It's in the fifth canto, yeah.
So, and anyway, it's spoken by him now.
Yeah, yeah. Good. Please tell us something about Rishabdev if it's there.
Let's see.
Maybe just.
I'm just looking at maybe the previous chapter actually.
His sons, or he had sons.
Yeah, I always get mixed up between him and Jad Bharat.
Okay.
You know, because they had a similar nature, some degree, yeah.
Well, chapter 3 is called Rishabdev's appearance in the womb of Meru Devi, the wife of King Nabi.
Okay.
But I have to
5518.
And in this chapter, chapter 4, Rishabdev, the son of Maharaj Nabi, begot 100 sons. And during the reign of those sons, the world was very happy in all respects. When Rishabdev appeared as the son of Maharaj Nabi, he was appreciated by the people as the most exalted and beautiful personality of that age. His poise, influence, strength, enthusiasm, bodily luster, and other transcendental qualities were beyond compare. The word Rishabha refers to the best, or the supreme.
Is that
This is
from the Bhagavatam, or
Yes,
somebody has written it?
This is Prabhupada's
right.
okay. The introduction to the fourth chapter, the previous chapter, from where that was.
Right.
So I don't know if Srila Prabhupada actually wrote these introductions or not, or whether they were added later.
It's usually it's the beginning of each chapter. There's a synopsis.
Yes,
That's what that is. Oh, okay.
Due to the super excellent attributes of the son of Maharaj Nabi, the king named his son Rishabha, or the best. His influence was incomparable. Although there was a scarcity of rain, Rishabdev did not care for Indra, the king of heaven, who was in charge of supplying rain. To his own potency, Rishabdev sumptuously covered Ajanava with ample rain, Ajanava. After receiving Rishabdev, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as his son, King Nabi began to raise him very carefully. After that, he entrusted the ruling power to him and, retiring from family life, lived at Badrik Ashram, completely engaged in the worship of Vasudeva, the Supreme Lord. To follow social customs, Lord Rishabdev for a while became a student in the Gurukula, and after returning, he followed the order of his guru and accepted a wife named Jayanti, who had been given to him by the king of heaven, Indra. He begot 100 sons in the womb of Jayanti. Of these 100 sons, the eldest was known as Bharat.
Oh,
The name to this.
so he's the father of Maharaj Bharat, and as in Jad Bharat.
Right.
I knew there was a connection there. It's all in the 5th canto, yeah.
Yes. Rishabda's other sons were headed by Kushavarta, Ilavarta, Brahmavarta, Malaya, Ketu, Vadrasena, Indra, Spring, Vidarbha, and Kitaka. There were also other sons, named many sons. Instead of ruling the kingdom, these 9, so the previous 9, Kavi, Havi, Antariksha, etc., these 9 became mendicant preachers of Krishna consciousness, following the religious precepts of the Bhagavatam. Their characteristics and activities are described in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam.
Prabhu, sorry, is, the part, you know that verse, Karuna Shashat,
Yes.
if you find that part, who's he teaching to who there?
That's what it said to him. That chapter's called his instructions to his sons.
Oh, to his sons, okay.
Yes, chapter 5. Lord Rishabdev's teachings to his sons.
Yes.
So we all have homework now.
Wow, yeah, okay.
Because we don't hear Bhagavatam every day. We hear Chaitanya Charitamrita every day. And something from Guru Maharaj or Guru Dev. We don't actually, as part of our official program.
So he was the father of Maharaj Bharat, yeah? After whom India, Bharatvarsha, is named. And, you know, I think it was the other sons of Maharaj Rishabdev. When Rishabdev left the world, he gave them special instructions to look after Bharat particularly. But they didn't like him. They were envious of him, and they basically rejected him. And he just went wandering off, you know, and that's a great part of the Bhagavatam, the story of Maharaj Bharat. And the deer, he had to take the body of the deer, you know, that was him. Yeah. And then the next life after that, he just had to have the short deer's life because he remembered deer at the time of death. But in the body of the deer, he didn't mix with, he didn't even mix with the herd of deer. He went on his own, and he was just eating leaves and stuff and waiting to die. And then he became then Jad Bharat, so called Jad. Jad means like dull or stupid, like because he acted like a madman, so that people wouldn't disturb him or approach him, ask him stuff, you know. So he could fully like think of Krishna 24/7, and so he was wandering like that, and he met Maharaj Rahugana on the road, and Maharaj Rahugana was in a palanquin, and he was going like this, and they were missing one of the carriers. I don't know why, I didn't say why, but so they saw this. They were looking for some fellow, you know, some, you know, like. Shudra type looking fellow, just to get him to carry the palanquin. And they saw him, they thought, because he was had a big body and he was very strong and very tough like a worker, so they got him to carry the palanquin. But as he was walking, he kept, couldn't walk in a straight line because he was avoiding the ants, so he wouldn't step on any ants or insects, you know. And the palanquin was going like this. And Maharaj Rahugana got really freaked out. He said, "What are you doing, you know? You're so foolish, you can't even carry the palanquin properly." So he said, stop, you know. And then he was talking with him, and trying to chastise him. But Jad Bharat didn't say anything. He says, he waited till he finished, and he said, actually, you're talking a load of nonsense, Maharaj. Don't mind me saying so, Because first of all, you don't know who you're talking to. You're talking to this body, but I'm not the body, And in this way, the conversation was going on. And Maharaj Rahugana realized, and he came down from the palanquin and did the obeisances, and he said, you go any way you like, You're fully a self-realized soul. You can go anywhere, so... And that was the verse that he said, Jad Bharat, to the king. Unless one smears his entire body with the dust from the lotus feet of a pure devotee, there's no way he can go back to Krishna, something like that. So then he went off wandering. Next thing, he was trying to get some work here and there, just to live. So he got a job on a farm, and at night he used to go up. There was a raised part at the end of the paddy field where they grew the rice. So he used to sit there in the moonlight and looking out with a stick, in case of any animals or things to come, And while he was there was some devotees of Kali, Ma Kali, and they were looking for someone to sacrifice to the mother, and preferably an animal or a man animal or a man who was like an animal. And when they saw him, they thought, yes, he's perfect, So they arrested him, everything, and took him. He didn't resist, So they took him to the place, and it was all set up for the big sacrifice. And then the chief dacoit, they bathed him and dressed him, put on the tilak, the thing there, and everything. And he took the big machete, and he was just going to chop his head. And as he was about to chop his head, then Ma Kali, the deity, the real Ma Kali, burst out, came bursting out, and she just went like decapitating all these gundas, and like the blood was flying, and her heads were rolling, and the she witches, her associates, and all that, and they're tossing their heads, like balls, and drinking the blood, and Bharat Maharaj just kind of wandered off, he didn't pick anything. But she couldn't tolerate that her pure devotee was being treated, ill-treated, So it's a great story, yeah. I remember we did that at the Manor once in the Chaitanya's Instant Theatre. They had a drama group, and they had this devotee, Jai Govinda, and he was like dressed up Ma Kali, the deity, like all blue, like a cardboard tongue there, kind of 8 hours. And then, so there was another devotee behind him, So at that point, just, the real one came out. It was like really, it's powerful, I remember, yeah. Hare Krishna. So, you want to chant?
It's nice that he wasn't resisting. He was happily accepting anything.
Yeah, anything that was happening there, yeah. Well, no, you've got the... please chant. Who's going to chant? Okay. Hari Hare Namah Krishna Devaya Namah Devaya Namah Keshavaya Namah Gopal Govinda Shri Madhusudana Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Jai Tushai Charana Vandana Jai.
Sripad Bhakti Maharaj ki
Jai.
Sripad Bhakti Sundar Govinda Swami Maharaj ki
Jai.
Sripad Bhakti Tridandi Maharaj ki
Jai.
Guru Varga ki
Jai.
Tulas Maharani ki
Jai.
Harinam Sankirtan ki
Jai.
Svarup Tridandi Maharaj ki Jai Krishna Prabhu ki
Govinda ki.